Welcome on Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. This is Rapid Reactions, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. Gerry and CJ, I tell you what, long day on Saturday watching football. Longhorns win 49-17, but we watched some other games. Alabama absolutely toasts LSU. The Tigers are out of the college football playoff. Then we had Miami lose also, Georgia losing to Ole Miss as well. Oklahoma in a catastrophe of a game from Jackson Arnold loses on the last minute as well. College football is crazy right now, but the Longhorns 8-1 and looking pretty good right now, guys. Going up to Fayetteville next week. Let's talk about the game yesterday, if you don't mind, and give people a little sense of what we were seeing each and everywhere. Gerry, I'm going to start with you. Overwhelming feelings or overriding thoughts, I guess, from the Longhorns on Saturday.
Yeah, I think, look, they did what they should do against the beat-up Florida team who was missing their top three corners, top two wideouts, top two quarterbacks, best offensive linemen. I mean, I could go on, but I think that's enough, right? Texas handled the business. They did what they should do, and they dominated. And after the end of that first series, they played pretty clean football in a couple of DeAndre Moore drops throughout the game until it was over. You know, Jarrett Gibson had the fumble in the fourth quarter, but the game wasn't in the balance at that point. So I thought Texas handled their business. I know some fans are upset about the rushing yards and what Florida was able to do on the ground yesterday. But look, Texas we saw a lot of teams not handle their business. And Texas went out and handled the business against a team that is still a good team, but a very injured team. I mean, and that's just a reality for Florida.
Yeah, I don't know if they're good. They're talented. CJ, what did you say? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, to me, it was all about, and Sarkisian mentioned this on Monday, finding the mojo, right? You know, how can you find some sort of rhythm? And we came on here last week and we said if it wasn't against Florida, it was against Arkansas. If you couldn't find together or piece together some sort of offensive consistency or identity, you probably weren't going to do it the rest of the season. Well, Texas found that on Saturday with Quinn Ewers throwing for 333, 5 scores. The first half was almost immaculate. I thought it was a really, really strong half, and that's 2 straight really strong first halves for Quinn Ewers in this offense. I know that first half interception against Vanderbilt tipped up, whatever, but you complete 17 in a row, you come out, you throw for 304 scores. You look really good doing that. And I think that that's now the identity of this Texas football team is relying on Quinn Ewers in this passing attack with Isaiah Bond coming back. It opens up a little bit more. We saw the verticality. That's impressive. I thought 360 passing yards, 220 rushing yards. That's what you want to see from Texas against a beat-up kind of mediocre average football team against Florida. That's a lot of confidence and momentum. With that mojo coming back moving forward, that's what I wanted to see, and that's exactly what they accomplished on Saturday.
Hey Gerry, 19 of 27. Quinn finished 19 of 27 for 333, 5 touchdowns. The number of explosive plays the Longhorns had yesterday, I thought, Gerry, was one of the big pieces of it. I also thought the decision by Steve Sarkisian to go for it on 4th and 1 early in the contest, well on his side of the field of play, was the head coach saying, "Hey, we're gonna take this and go as best we can, and not let the game happen to us. We're gonna take control of the game." What did you think of that? Not only the big plays that Texas produced, but that 4th and 1 call.
Yeah, I think, look, if you didn't have big plays yesterday, then you're not a very good offense. Again, right. Florida's missing their top 3 corners. Just go into a game without Malik Muhammad, Jahdae Barron, and just say Jalen Gilbo. Take your top 3 guys out and see how it goes for you. I mean, so Texas did what they were supposed to do. Quinn did what he was supposed to do. I don't think he played great. I thought he played good. He wasn't lights out in that game. I thought he played good, though. But he should, because if you don't have put pressure on Quinn Ewers, he's a really good player. So I thought that was it. I thought that was a good call by Sark. But again, I thought Texas did what they needed to do yesterday. I don't think they didn't play their best game, but they didn't have to play their best game yesterday. But I thought they improved on where they have been, if that makes sense. They didn't have as many outside of that first drive. they didn't have as many self-inflicted wounds yesterday. They got a couple of holding calls, but they didn't have the turnovers until Jarrett Gibson in the fourth quarter. There weren't any of the unlucky batted ball interceptions. There wasn't anything like that. In fact, you created turnovers yesterday. You didn't commit turnovers yesterday while the game was in the balance.
Hey, Jerry, can I ask you what for Quinn would have been a better showing? Because, again, it was about 33 minutes of play time for him. You scored 35 points. You feel good. What more would have been available for him in that instance? I know that second possession should have probably been an interception against that throw over the middle against a linebacker. But other than that, did anything strike you where it was like, okay, he needs to improve on this moving forward as well?
Too many back foot throws against no pressure for me. Okay. I mean, that's the thing. That was my thing with him is I don't like the back foot throws without pressure. Okay. I think that against a banged up secondary you can get away with. I don't think you get away with that in a college football playoff against a good team.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what you're really striving for. Are you talking about championship, ultra high level championship player? You're talking about beating Florida at some level, and so I think that's part of it. I would also say this. I mean, the bigger piece for me is the fact that both of you guys hit on this, is that Texas did more of what it's supposed to have done. My prediction prior to going into this game was the Horns scoring 27. Well, they lapped that midway through the second quarter. Okay. And so to y'all's point about them picking it up and executing better and not as many self-inflicted wounds, I think is huge. Whether no matter how you think of or grade the quarterback, et cetera, their execution level was much higher, even against air, if they were playing nobody, right? Look, there were throws that Quinn Ewers missed. He missed the one that the out to Isaiah Bond where McClain slipped. He threw that ball inside. If McClain's up, that may be a pick too. But I just feel like, we're grading and thinking about this in a very strict way. And if we keep it that way, people always understand it. We want to see Texas go as far as they possibly can.
That's right. That's what it's about.
And that's where this is. Okay, let me ask y'all this. The Longhorns, I felt like got beat up a little bit on the interior run in the second half. But I feel strongly that was because they didn't commit any safeties to the run defense really in the second half. They were not going to get beat over the top and let Florida get a cheap touchdown. CJ, in your opinion, what did you see in that regard?
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. I was a little surprised at how much Warner was able to attempt deep passes. I thought that maybe they came out a little gun happy in that first half. You look at the first half statistics. Listen, they ran for about 3.7 yards per attempt. I think you take that regardless of who you're playing. That's only 74 rushing yards. And if you want to run the football down 42 points in the third quarter and find success there, be my guest, because you're not going to lose a football game down by 42 by only, attacking in the run game. So sure, you could look at it and say Texas wasn't perfect in that game. And of course, 200 total rush yards to two, running backs probably isn't great statistically to look at, but in the matter in which it happened, with the majority of those points and yards happening when you're up by 5 or 6 scores, I don't think there's a reason to be upset, of course, until you go back and look at the film and say, okay, linebackers need to fit better, defensive lines need to set an edge or, hold on to their blocks a little bit better. But all of that normally happened in that game with a second or third or fourth string guy on the field. I'm not too overwhelmingly, concerned about it right now, especially when you consider the first half statistics, 3.7 yards per carry with Vernon Broughton not playing.
Yeah, I will add this to that. Texas actually outrushed Florida in the game, 210-97. Now, a couple of those were big runs, one from Isaiah Bond on the reverse, as well as one from Jaden Blue that really got out there, and I think it was a 45-yarder or so. Jerry, what do you make of the Texas run defense at this point? That was a little disappointing, but, we saw some young guys actually get out there and get in the game. Sadir Mitchell played in the first quarter. Alex January in the first quarter when the game was still in doubt even, right? And then the third and fourth quarter, we saw more of Vernon Broughton, who came back from injury, as well as Aaron Bryant probably got his most extensive action of the year as well.
Yeah, it was similar to the Mississippi State game in a way that Bobby, you mentioned that earlier after the game last night. Texas was willing to play a little umbrella defense, and if you want to run it 45 times in a game that Texas is controlling, be our guest. I also want to say, though, Jaden Ball's a really good player. Jaden Ball made 3 or 4 or 5 really good runs on his own to maximize some carries that not every back makes. I mean, that guy, he can at 230, he's got a jump cut and a skip cut, and he really reads linebackers now. If the linebacker takes any type of false step, is slow diagnosing, that guy makes you pay. So I want to give a little credit there. And Florida's got a good offensive line. They've improved as the season's moved along. Now, they missed Damian George, their best guy, but they've improved running the football as the season's moved along. So a little bit of that as well. Because Florida still recruits good players. And they just have a lot of them hurt, but they still recruit good players. So I thought it was a little bit of both on that. The interesting takeaway from yesterday will be, what can Arkansas implement in 6 days against Texas that they saw Saturday, and do it with QB run game attached to it. That's what's going to be interesting for me headed to Fayetteville.
Boy, I tell you talk about QB run game. LSU doesn't want to hear anything about it. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those other games, just to as it relates to Texas and the SEC title hunt. Before we do that, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Adam Lowy, over at the Lowy Law Firm. Adam and his group have been helping injured Texans for more than 20 years now. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, make sure you reach out to Adam and his group at loweylawfirm.com. That's loweylawfirm.com. Adam, thanks for making the rapid reactions piece possible for On Texas Football. All right, let's talk a little bit about that, because the SEC race is now very strange. You have Tennessee with 1 loss in conference. You've got Texas with 1 loss in conference. A&M with 1 loss in conference. Georgia now has 2 losses in conference. Alabama, 2 losses in conference. You have Ole Miss with two losses in conference. It is top to bottom a morass of sorts. Texas now has just 3 games remaining, all conference games. Arkansas next week, as Jerry mentioned, followed by Kentucky at home, and then finishing up with the Aggies in College Station. What do y'all make of this SEC race right now, and where Texas sits in it?
Look, it's wide open. I mean, we're a Tennessee win, a Georgia win over Tennessee in 6 days, from beginning close to the mass chaos.
Yep.
I mean, that's the reality. And then it would come down to, does Texas handle business at Arkansas? Kentucky's not beating Texas. They don't have enough offense. Does Texas handle business at Arkansas? Does A&M get tripped up at Auburn before the Texas game? But if Georgia beats Tennessee in 6 days, then man, we're on the edge of having to read the rules of all the tiebreakers, and that's not what anybody wants to go through right now. I'm not sure anybody has time for that. And then you have the sneaky South Carolinas of the world. I mean, there's this conference race is getting very interesting. And again, what really sets it off is if Georgia beats Tennessee. Then there's like no margin for error for anybody left if you're A&M or Texas. I mean,
or if Texas loses to Arkansas,
that's exactly right.
That would be a big. What do you think about it, CJ? Your thoughts on the race right now?
Well, I think it's a lot of fun, right? There's 3 teams right now with 1 loss, and then you look at what's behind that, and you're like, oh, this thing goes about 8 or 9 deep. Like, okay, this is the SEC that Texas signed up for. This is the fun conference that it's supposed to mean more, and that's what makes these games in November what to remember, right? That's what Sarkisian's been mentioning this whole last week and a half or so. But I look at it for Texas specifically, and how do you get to Atlanta first? You take care of business in Arkansas. To Jerry's point, to echo that, you're not going to lose to Kentucky, and if you do, something catastrophically has happened to this football team at home. I don't see that in the cards. But if you take care of business on the road against Texas A&M College Station, now you get to sit back, relax, and kind of see how the dominoes fall. You will be the only 1-loss team in the conference for conference play, considering what Tennessee and Georgia, what goes on in that game as well. So ultimately, you control your destiny. You got to be happy with the number of teams in conference with 1 loss dwindling down to 3. That was kind of the big worry coming into the week. If Georgia comes off with a victory, if you look at it, if LSU finds a big victory, now you got to go deeper into the tiebreakers. Both of those teams lost this weekend. Now, as a Texas fan, as someone that follows Texas, you get to sit back, say, all right, 3 teams remain. Texas is one of them. Take care of your business, and you'll be Atlanta regardless.
So Tennessee has 2 road games left, by the way, at Georgia, at Vanderbilt. They probably at maybe Texas, you could argue, because it's at Arkansas, at A&M. They literally have 2 rivalry games on the road left. But those are the 2 teams you're looking at from a what's left standpoint that have the toughest games left. I mean, because A&M was off this week. They have New Mexico State, then at Auburn and Texas at home. And at Auburn, even though I almost wonder if they're due for a win, that would still be a bad loss for A&M at this point. But, you look at Tennessee and Texas, they have the toughest paths left to remain 1 loss, which will be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. I hear all of this. Facts are this. Oregon and Ohio State will be 1 and 2 later today when the news comes out. I predict Texas will move up all the way to 3 with losses from Miami and Georgia. And yet, I will also add this. Earlier this year, I made the example of Vanderbilt being very similar to last year's Houston game, where Texas had to go on the road and beat a team that they should beat. Now, this Arkansas upcoming game, it feels like it feels like the TCU game of last year. Ooh. Where a team that's a little got something to them a little bit can threaten you a little bit. Maybe you haven't played a running quarterback as well.
We'll play up against Texas.
Yeah, and they play up against Texas. That whole idea, I think that's the one that kind of is catching my eye right now. So that means what happened last year? Texas had to go win the football game. They have to go win these football games. There's not going to be a walk in the park here. That's the one thing you can say about the SEC, even though yesterday felt like one. And that is very, very rare in this conference, whether it's because a team was decimated by injuries or because your quarterback's hot. And Sark called up a great masterful game.
No doubt.
That's what I want to finish with here, if y'all don't mind.
Absolutely.
Reactions. I thought Sark, almost from the start to the finish, dialed up a perfect game plan. They didn't always execute 100%. There were issues here and there, but he took the bull by the horns and really ran it excellently. The reverse to Isaiah Bond, guys. That was a beautiful play call. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. Actually, it almost felt like a double reverse, but there was only one handoff, right? I mean, but Sark called a tremendous game, CJ.
I'll mention this on Texas Football this morning for folks in the community. You'll go read this, but one of my big takeaways from that game was the level of misdirection that Texas had was beautiful offensively, right? Florida was turned around. They were spinning around. They had no clue where the football was going. And Quinn Ewers, to his credit, was putting the ball where it needed to go. And it was just accurate enough at times for the pass to be completed. I know folks kind of want to get the magnifying glass out there and critique Quinn as much as they want. But listen, the ball was completed. And if it wasn't, it was in a position to be completed for the most part. But I thought the misdirections, the pump fake and goes on the screens, everything that was there for Texas in the chunk yardage scenarios, I thought it was all Steve Sarkisian kind of dialing up. And listen, I've been critical of Coach Sarkisian when it comes to finding big plays in his bag. He pulled them out. As Jerry's mentioned, I mean, this wasn't a great Florida secondary, but against bad secondaries, you got to find ways to get your guys in space, and they did so schematically and then executed as a result. I thought it was a really well-run game plan by Sarkisian in the offense.
I thought what Sark did that was actually, and I know the fans may have not liked it, but I think it was really smart in this game, is they're not running into the brick wall, meaning they're not just handing the ball to Jaden Blue on inside zone 12 times just to say you ran inside zone. I mean, because it'd be easy right now to just say, oh, we just got to force the run. But you know what? Outside zone, wide zone is what you are with these 2 backs. I mean, so, and then your perimeter passing game is the extension of your run game, and at times is your best run game. So I really like that Sark did not bang his head against the wall, so to speak, in the run game. And it doesn't look good when you have 6 carries for 7 yards nearing the end of the first half with your backs, or at the end of the first half with your backs. I know it doesn't look good, but if you take the extension of the run game, it looks a little better. I mean, that's what I would say, because I think the worst thing that Texas could do right now is just, say, you know what? We're going to run this thing up the middle 12 times for 22 yards, because that's not really maximizing your offense, especially in a game yesterday against Florida, who was going to have a tough time defending you against the pass and tackling you on the perimeter. They did what they needed to do. Sark did what he needed to do.
Mm-hmm. What did y'all think about? I'm curious. I agree with both you guys. Good game plan, inventive, creative, but also strategic, and didn't bang their head on the against the wall. What about the defense of Pete Kwiatkowski? Because he continued and pitched a shutout in the first half again, 35-0. It gave Texas the ability to go out and do it. Now, obviously, Florida's playing with their third-string quarterback. I get it. But we saw one maybe defensive bust all day in the secondary. What did y'all make of PK's defense overall?
Yeah, and that defensive bust came from a freshman cornerback who's kind of still learning the ropes, right? Got his eyes caught in the cookie jar, if you know what I mean, back in the backfield on a play-action pass, didn't cover his third on a cover 3 look. But to the point, listen, you allow 130 yards total in the first half. 0 points. You take that regardless of who you're playing, what the level of quarterback is looking like. You go into your own red zone a few times, you come away with 0 points. You take that. I thought that there was individual playmaking on display once again. Alfred Collins, these last 3 weeks, has been absolutely tremendous. Starting with the Georgia game, moving to Vanderbilt, and then what we saw Saturday afternoon against Florida. Listen, he's disruptive in both the run game and the pass game. Both of those interceptions on Saturday were a result of Alfred Collins getting into the backfield, getting a hand up there, and finding disruptive ways to make life difficult for opposing quarterbacks. And that's exactly what Texas needs. And then you saw the individual playmaking of Trey Moore, who finally, and it's been a long time coming, a sack, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery was all over the place for the Longhorns. It was really impressive. And when you top that off with as good a secondary that I've seen in probably 10 years following the Texas Longhorns, I mean, those guys are making plays on footballs everywhere. There's not a weak link right now, and if there is, I haven't seen it. I don't think opposing offensive coordinators have seen it.
Jerry, what'd you make of Texas defense overall?
Yes, I think they continue to have great communication and continuity, and I really think that's the strength of the defense. Look, are they as talented as Georgia's defense? No. Are they playing at a higher level? Except one game, yeah. I mean, and even in that game, yes, to a certain extent. But they have great communication and continuity. That's the thing that I think is their greatest strength. And they have so much more disruption with it. PK, he blitzes a low percentage at a time compared to a lot of other D coordinators, right? But his guys are getting pressure without bringing the numbers all the time. And that's a good place to be. Again, as long as they can get enough pressure without bringing the extra number, then that really, Texas becomes a tough team to beat. But again, how good is – one of the things I look at is sometimes the guys who don't have their name called a lot can get overlooked. How good is Manny Muhammad actually playing right now?
Good point. Because
Jahdae Barron has interception, and people keep challenging him and not Manny Muhammad. People are seeing on tape, number 5, the guy's attached all the time. That's how, when you know a corner's playing exceptionally well, is when the other corner's making plays and they still don't challenge the other guy. I mean, Texas has a lockdown corner, and I'm not saying he hasn't given up. Everybody gives up something, but the teams that are playing Texas are telling you that Texas has a corner that is extremely high level that they're not even really trying to attack very often. That makes your secondary better, number one, but it's just the continuity, the communication. They look like a strong unit to me, more so than any one particular player that you can pick. And they look like they all get along, so to speak, and play together well.
It's one unit.
Yeah, it is one unit. And I would add this, CJ and Jerry, 4 years at defense coordinator for PK. I think he's finally got the pieces to run the style of defense he likes to run. And I would add this as well. Next week, they can't just pin their ears back and run past the quarterback. This is going to be a game against Arkansas where they're going to need that 4 years of discipline that's been brought into them, stay in the rush lanes, because otherwise Arkansas, whichever quarterback they go with, will just run right by you. And so that takeaway and that thought process of being a smart, opportunistic defense is certainly one that I think Texas is right now. And to y'all's point, you also said they had a disruptor or two. They do. I mean, that's the other piece of it. So it combined smart defense along with a guy like Anthony Hill, or maybe it was Trey Moore, or maybe it was Collins, whoever, they're finding a way to get turnovers and keep guys off the board. At one point, while the game was still in doubt, Florida was 1 of 7 on third downs. Nobody's going to win a game. It doesn't work that way, And so hats off to PK and what he's done with this defense this year. All right, I got one final question before we do that, though. I want to talk about our friend Adam Lowy. Just remind you guys, if you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, and think you might be due compensation, make sure you reach out to the Lowy Law Firm for a free consultation, no strings attached. Again, that's loweylawfirm.com. All right, guys, you think Texas played well enough on Saturday to establish themselves as a favorite in the SEC? Because I don't know if the word favorite is appropriate, but they're going to be ranked number 3 in the country later today is my guess. That puts them as the odds-on favorite in some respects. Alabama, if they can get to the championship game, they may be playing as good as anyone. You saw what they did against LSU last night. What's y'all's takeaway? Who's the favorite right now in the SEC? Is it the Longhorns?
Right now, ESPN, FPI, and everybody, they'll have Texas with the highest percentage chances to win the SEC. That's what's going to happen. Would I say look, the reality for me, if Tennessee beats Georgia Saturday, they're the favorite.
Because all they've got is Vanderbilt left, right?
That's right. And they have a non-con. They become the favorite if they beat Georgia because they're going to be rolling into that Vanderbilt game. Texas, then, even if they handle business against Arkansas and Kentucky, they still have to go to A&M. Where would you rather be playing the last weekend of the year, at A&M or at Vanderbilt?
Yeah,
I mean, I'd rather beat Tennessee at Vanderbilt if I beat Georgia than Tennessee at A&M.
Yeah,
I mean, so I think by the percentages and the rankings, Texas is going to be the favorite. I'm not sure I would say they're the clear favorite, though. I want to see what happens with Tennessee, Georgia first, because if Tennessee beats Georgia, whether they're called the favorite or not, they're my favorite to win the regular season SEC championship.
I'll give you this. Tennessee, by the way, lost their quarterback, Nico Yamaleeva, in midway through that game, basically. But Josh Heupel in the post game said it was just precautionary. He should be back for the Georgia game next week. CJ, what do you think about the Longhorns? They in that mix right now, in your opinion, for the SEC? In the mix, they definitely are. But are they the favorite?
Yeah, I think you have to combine a lot of different aspects here, and the one thing that was always holding Texas back was Texas over the last 3 weeks. It was the holding penalties. It was the quarterback play. It was turnovers. For the most part, I thought Texas cleaned that up in the first half specifically. And what happened? 3 minutes into the second half, it's 42-0. And again, Vanderbilt's not a bottom feeder. No. I know that they were dinged up, but that's not a team that is completely devoid of talent. And it's 42-0 because Texas played its style of football. I think you look at it in the sense that, hey, if Texas is able to replicate this against other opponents, I'm not going to say it's 42-0 3 minutes into the second quarter or third quarter, but Texas certainly is more talented defensively than anybody, maybe not named Georgia, in the entire conference. And when the offense is rolling like this, how can you not favor the Longhorns against anybody that they might face in the conference moving forward? I think that's a pretty fair kind of take about things. Because, again, Tennessee's got a really good defense. They do. It's right there with Texas. But what's going to separate the two? In my eyes, it's Quinn Ewers. I don't think that Nico Iamaleava is going to be a guy that separates Tennessee over Texas with Quinn Ewers. I just don't, not yet, and that's where the experience, that's where the continuity and the system comes along. And that's where being, a 5-star number 1 overall quarterback comes into play here. And that's, to me, why Texas should be considered the favorite moving forward, because you can rely on that defense, the number 1 defense in the country at that.
Yeah, CJ, you said Vanderbilt, but I think you meant clearly Florida up 42, nothing there. But I will add this, the way Jackson Dart is playing right now. Don't forget about the Ole Miss Rebels if they finish with just 2 losses as well. It's going to be a fun last 3 weeks of the season because Texans yet again poised, 8-1, guys, 11-1 a year ago. Look at what Brent Venables is looking at right now in Norman. Another really bad loss, up by a score with less than a minute 30 to go. They end up losing after Missouri comes down and scores a touchdown, and then Jackson Arnold gives up a fumble and a scoop and score for the Tigers. The OU quarterback did that. I tell you what, it's just tough to look at that. Jerry, you had something you want to say before we let people go?
Yeah, look, the new playoff update will be on rankings release will be Tuesday. But you know what Saturday did is Ole Miss did not get knocked out. LSU did get knocked out. But you're sitting there with Tennessee, Texas A&M, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama still in the playoff hunt. I guess Missouri technically is. Yeah. No, but they won't be. But Ole Miss has at Florida and Mississippi State left. They will win both of those games. So they're going to be sitting there at 10-2. Georgia, if they beat Tennessee, then they have UMass and then Georgia Tech at home. If they beat Tennessee, I think they get the 10-2. Then you have A&M who can't lose out. They have to win out. They have to beat New Mexico State and Auburn and Texas to be 10-2. We're getting to a scenario where, guys, it looks like we may have 4 teams for 3 spots.
Or 5 teams.
Or 5 for 4.
Yeah.
We're getting really close to that because, if Jalen Milroe plays at the level he is, I mean, he looked like a mini Michael Vick. They have Mercer at Oklahoma and Auburn. That ain't bad. Looks like you're going 10-2 in that schedule too.
Yeah.
So we're getting really close to some playoff chaos in the SEC.
Boy, if LSU needs to work on anything this off week, it's how to stop the quarterback run. Woo. Yeah. They have had issues all season long with that, and last night was no different. All right, that's going to do it for Rapid Reactions. Congrats to the Texas Longhorns. Man, 8-1 yet again. Likely going to be ranked number 3 in the country, headed to Arkansas next weekend. That is an 11 o'clock kickoff, by the way, if you're making it up to Fayetteville. For CJ Vogel, Gerry Hamilton, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchison, and our sponsor, Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm, I'm Bobby Burton. We'll have more. We'll have offensive grades coming up as well as defensive grades. We got the second watch with Rod Babers. Join us all on a fun Sunday afternoon. You guys have a good one this morning. Hook 'em.